couple of weeks ago on the channel, we made Mapo Tofu, and I liked it so much, I thought I'd see if I could put it into a sandwich. So, to make this fit into a sandwich, we're going to have to change it up just a little bit, but the core ingredients are going to be the same as the Mapo Tofu. Also, obviously because we're putting this on YouTube, we're going to be making our own baguettes. Also, we're going to be making a spring onion mayonnaise. Okay, to start off with, we're going to need to braise the pork belly. So in here, I've just got some miso that I dissolved in some warm water, and now we're going to add the rest of the spices. The spices are going to include what you would find in a Mapo Tofu. So I got that doppelgang. I probably pronounced that completely wrong, but it's a spicy fermented bean paste. I got some finely chopped up ginger and garlic, about equal amounts of each. I got some Szechuan peppercorns that I toasted off and then ground finely in my mortar and pestle. I got a tablespoon of black Chinese vinegar. I've got a tablespoon of dark soy sauce and a tablespoon of regular soy sauce. I got a tablespoon of brown sugar and I got a teaspoon of dried chili. Once you got all that in, you just want to go ahead and give it a little mix in so it's all dissolved. Okay, once you've got that all nicely mixed in, I got some pork belly here with the skins removed. So we're just going to lay these in there. Once you got your pork all nicely nestled in there, we want to cover this with some alfoil. Okay, once you got it all nicely sealed with the alfoil, you're going to stick this into a preheated 150 degree oven until the meat's nice and tender. Okay, to make the baguette, I've already got my flour measured out into the stand mixer. As always, correct amounts of ingredients are going to be on the website, traditionalbutnot.com. To the flour, I'm going to add sugar and salt. Just like in my other baguette video, I'm using brown sugar because I think it tastes better. So we're just going to close this up, give it a quick spin up to get the sugar and the salt incorporated with the flour. After you've given your sugar and your salt and your flour a quick spin up, we're going to crumble in the fresh yeast. Now you could use dried yeast, but you know, the dry active packet yeast, but I prefer fresh yeast in all mine. I think it brings a much better flavour to your bread. Okay, once you've got that crumbled in, I've got 350 mils of tepid water. We're going to tip most of this in. We're going to tip it all in. We're going to close it down. We're going to start off on a low speed to get it incorporated. Once it comes together, we can turn up the speed a little bit. After it's all come together and it looks like a sticky mess like this, we'll get our bench scraper in there. We'll scrape it all out and we'll get it turned out onto the work surface. I turned the dough out onto a lightly floured work surface and I've lightly floured my hands. So we're just going to go ahead and bring this together into a nice tight little ball. And if you want to give it a little, knead with your hands because fresh dough just feels so good, you go ahead and do that. Once you've watered into a nice little ball there, you just want to get your another bowl. You want to lightly oil the insides. And as always, I added too much again. And you want to get your dough, plop it in there. Then we're going to set a dinner plate on top and we're going to let this rise for about an hour. So it's been roughly an hour since my dough's been proving. So now we're just going to degas it all. I'm going to give it a few stretch and folds, which is simple enough. You just stretch it out till it meets resistance and fold it back on itself. You just want to go around, do this 4 or 5 times. Then we'll gather it all up, get it back into a bowl. I'm going to plop it back in the bowl. Then we're going to let this prove again for about another hour. So it hasn't been quite another hour, but my dough has doubled in size. We'll go ahead and get a little bit of flour laid down. And we'll go ahead and we'll just turn it out onto the bench. Okay, once you've got it turned out onto your work surface, you just want to gather it up into sort of a log shape. I'm going to divide this into 6 equal parts. I already weighed the dough, and for mine to be in 6 equal parts, it's going to be 162 grams each. So I'm just going to go ahead and divide it all up. Once you got your dough all portioned out with lightly floured fingers, you just want to go ahead and flatten it out to degas everything, and just fold it all in on itself, like that. And then, while pushing down, and with your thumb and rolling it between your fingers, you just want to use your thumb to tuck it in as you're rolling it around. And that'll create a nice little tight ball. And then we'll just set that aside and we'll cover it under a damp tea towel and just let the dough balls rest for about 15 minutes. And then we'll come back. After you've let your balls rest for about 15 minutes or so, we need to roll them into the baguette shape. So to that, you just lightly flour your work surface and you just want to push all the air out. And you want to flatten it out into a bit of a rectangle shape, about this big. So if you ever need to just pick it up and stretch it a little bit. The main thing you want to do here is get any air bubbles out. You don't want any air bubbles in here. We want a nice tight crumb when this is finished baking. And any air bubbles, you're just going to get a big hole in your bread when you cut it open. And that's not what we want.
So, once you've got it sort of into a rectangle there, you just want to roll it up. So you just want to roll it over itself and then pull back a little bit. As you go, any little air bubbles you see that form, make sure you pop them. So just go ahead and keep rolling and tuck it in nice and tight. If it does get a little sticky, just a little bit of flour on your fingertips, keep on rolling. Once you get to the end, just go ahead and pinch the seam, make sure it's all nicely sealed. Now, I don't want these baguettes to have a tapered end. I want them to be quite stubby on the end. So if you want yours tapered, you just got to roll them a little bit harder on the outside, but I want mine kind of flat on the ends. Once you've got it all rolled up into a log in a uniform shape, you want to go ahead and get it on your baguette tray. As you can see, I've already done the rest of them. You want to put these seam side down. I'm going to cover these over with a clean towel. I'm going to let them proof for about another 30 to 45 minutes. It's been about 20 minutes, half an hour since we rolled these out, and they've puffed up quite nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and score them with my serrated knife. Now I'm going to stick these into an oven that's been preheated to 200 degrees. Now I've got a pan in there that's also been preheating on the bottom with just a little bit of water. And now when I stick these in, I've boiled my kettle. I'm going to fill that pan up to create more steam. And also, just before I put these in, I'm going to spray them down with some water. So we'll get these all sprayed down. Nice good dousing of the water. And this is going to help with the puff and the crust of the baguette. So I'm going to chuck these in the oven. Also fill up that water pan. And they're going to bake for about 30 minutes. So the bread I pulled out, it's been about 26 minutes in there. I rotated them halfway through. And now while they're still hot and you pull them out the oven, you just want to coat them with some butter. And then you're going to let them cool down completely before cutting into them. The next thing we're going to make is a spring onion mayonnaise. So I've got a big bunch of spring onion here. Mostly just the tops. I've cut the white bottom part off. So we're going to just blanch these off in some hot water. I've just boiled my kettle, tipped the boiling water over the top. You'll see the colour change to like a brighter green. It'll take around 30 seconds or so. Then once that happens, we'll move it over to the ice water bath. I'm not sure if you're picking it up on the camera, but it went into more of a fluorescent green. Now you want to transfer it over to your ice water bath and let it cool down completely. Once your spring onion's all cooled off, we need to dry this off really, really well. So I've just got some paper towels there, and you just want to sop up as much water as you can out of this spring onion. So once I've done that, we'll come back. So as you see, I've dried off the spring onion and I've just chopped them up roughly to help out my little blender here. So now I'm going to pour in my neutral oil. I'm going to bang the top on and we're going to blitz this until it's nice and smooth. So I told you a couple of little fizz before. This won't get smooth in that little mini processor that I have. But when we make the mayonnaise with this finer blade, it will get smooth. To my tall-sided container here, I've cracked one whole egg, and to that I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar, and I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. To this, we're going to pour in all of the oil and spring onion mixture. Now simple enough, I'm going to put the immersion blender in. As we turn it on, we'll slowly pull up to emulsify it into a mayonnaise. Now I've got it to the right thickness that I like it quite thick. If you wanted it even thicker, you add a bit more oil. If you wanted it a little thinner than this, add some water. So I'm going to transfer this over to a little squirt bottle and stick it in the fridge till we're ready to use it. I've had my pork in the oven there, cooking away for about an hour and a half. Now I've just removed it, and I've removed the foil, and I've checked the temperature of the pork. It's sitting around 75, 77 degrees. So I'm going to, obviously I've already removed the foil, but I'm going to stick it back in the oven uncovered and let it cook the rest of the way uncovered. Still keeping the temperature at 150 degrees. So I've removed my pork from the oven. And now we're just going to let it rest. We're just going to loosely tense some foil over the top, and then we're going to let that rest and cool down. So I've let the pork rest a little bit. It's still a little bit warm, so we're going to remove all the meat and put it in a dish to the side, and then we'll get all this liquid into a pan and start reducing it. So to prepare the tofu, all I did was take it out the package and cut it up into cubes about yay big. Now I've got a pot of nearly boiling water here, and to that I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt. We'll just mix that around a little bit so it dissolves. Now you want to carefully add the tofu. Easiest way is on a slotted spoon so you don't splash yourself with hot water. You just want to carefully add it in here, and then once you've got it all added, we're going to return it to the stove and keep it on a very gentle simmer for 2 to 3 minutes. And then we're just going to leave the lid on and move it off the heat and then let it steep until we're ready to use it. So why we do this step is just to season the tofu, and it actually firms it up a little bit more. As you can see, I've got my sauce all nicely reduced down. Now carefully, we're going to remove the tofu from the salty liquid there. Okay, once you got your tofu in your liquid here, you just want to carefully get the tofu all coated, and then you'll be ready to build your sandwich. To build the sandwich, it's very easy. You can build it any way you want, but I'm going down with the mayonnaise on both sides. Then we're going in with the meat. Obviously you can see I've chopped the meat up into these little matchsticks. And then we can go in with the tofu. Also, you want to drizzle a bit of extra sauce over the top. And to finish off, just a little bit more thinly sliced spring onion. And you're ready to eat. Okay, now comes my favourite time to eat it. It's actually pretty good. I made Mapo Tofu on the channel a couple of weeks back, and it was a little bit on the spicier side. This one's a little bit more tamed down. I also threw up the ideas of maybe making the tofu a little bit crispy. When I make this sandwich again, which I definitely will be, I'm going to make the tofu crispy. But this is a damn good first try.